Hello viewers, my name is Andrew Dean. I'm the Vice President of Research and Innovation at Lakehead University. In this edition of Research Matters, I'm delighted to speak with Dr. Elaine Wiersma, Associate Professor, Department of Health Sciences, and the Associate Director of the Center for Education and Research in Aging and Health, sometimes we call SARA. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you.
Tell us about yourself and what are your research interests?
Sure. So I'm originally from Southern Ontario, but I moved to Thunder Bay in 2004, and I started at Lakehead University in 2007. So it's been a few years now, and I spent a lot of years working with older adults and particularly people with dementia in practice. And so that was always kind of what piqued my interest. I'm a qualitative and a participatory action researcher. And so the goal of my work is really to tell people stories in ways that challenge the stigma of living with dementia. Inclusion and human rights are really the values that underlie my work. And I've done research in a variety of different settings, from community settings to long-term care, from work here in Northwestern Ontario, provincially, nationally, and even internationally. But I would say for the last number of years, I've been focusing my work very specifically here in Northwestern Ontario.
Great. Aging, forgetfulness, and memory. Is dementia just about forgetting things? What is dementia?
Yeah, so dementia is a overall term for a set of symptoms that can include loss of memory, can also include things like loss of language, difficulty processing, difficulty problem solving, and other abilities that interfere with daily life. Alzheimer's disease, which most of us are familiar with, is one type of dementia. So dementia is the umbrella term. But one of the biggest challenges that we've heard in speaking with people living with dementia is not just the challenge that comes with the diagnosis, but the ways that they're treated after they receive a diagnosis. That label of dementia really causes people to make assumptions about their abilities, and so people will talk to their care partners and not to them. And so my work is really about addressing that stigma in two ways. The first is specifically working with people with dementia to support them and to empower them and to help them understand that they can live well with a diagnosis of dementia. And the second is how we can actually create more inclusive and more supportive communities for people with dementia and their families.
So research is often best done when there's a certain interest in it from ourselves. How did you personally get interested in dementia research and dementia?
So my journey into academia was not a straightforward one whatsoever. Kind of coming from an immigrant family where not a lot of people in my family went to university, university always felt really inaccessible to me. And so, the pressure in high school, what are you going to do, with your life kind of thing, I didn't really know. And so I kind of chose the shortest education route that there was possible that would hopefully guarantee me a job. At the time, it was a 4-month course called a healthcare aid course. Today, we know it as the Personal Support Worker Program, which is now since a year long. But it was during my placement in long-term care there that I really began to see how older adults in long-term care were treated, and particularly people living with dementia. And I'd seen a number of situations and circumstances that I found really distressing and really bothersome. And I think this was the start of what really fueled my passion. After I finished this program, I ended up getting a job in a local retirement home through a personal connection and because of my music abilities, and I just absolutely loved it. I loved the job, I loved the residents I was privileged to work with, and so I continued my education, different courses in college, which led to a diploma, which then led to a transfer to an undergraduate program, and sure enough, my master's and my PhD. It was during my undergraduate degree and a professor who really inspired me there that I began to think about what was the best way to make change for this population, and decided that I wanted to do my PhD from there because I felt that that was the best way to make change and to give back to the community. I've had the support of amazing people along the way. My mentor, Dr. Sherry Dupuis, who was an undergraduate professor, gave me all kinds of research opportunities, and my PhD supervisor as well. And so when I started at Lakehead University, my goal really was, how do I bring this research and my interest in the community and in practice together? And so that's been my goal, is to do that. And had the fortunate opportunity to work with people like Bill Heibein, who will be joining me shortly. And, no journey happens without many people supporting along the way. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Right. Tell me about some of the projects that you've worked on.
So I'll tell you about two of them that illustrate, I think, the kind of two main focuses of my research. The first was developing a self-management program for people living with dementia that was funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. And we worked with a large team of researchers, practitioners, and people living with dementia. We partnered with the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario, the Murray Alzheimer Research and Education Program at the University of Waterloo, and the Centre for Research on Personhood in Dementia from University of British Columbia. And we had an advisory group in Thunder Bay, Waterloo, and Vancouver with people living with dementia and their care partners. And so there were a couple of outcomes from that project. We were able to develop the self-management program, which is called Taking Control of Our Lives. It is now offered across Ontario to people living with dementia through their local Alzheimer's societies, and so we're really proud of that. But it also created another outcome. Basically, our advisory group in Thunder Bay said to me when the project was over, so what's next? You need to find something else for us to do. Give us another project to do. And so we talked about it, and we decided to create what is now called the Northwest Dementia Working Group. It's an advocacy group, a grassroots advocacy group of people with dementia and care partners. That was in 2014, and it's the first, to my knowledge anyways, in Canada of that kind of group that's solely led by people with dementia and their care partners. The second is the Building Capacity Project, and that's in partnership with the University of British Columbia and Dr. Alison Finney. And the purpose of that is really about how we create more inclusive societies and communities for people with dementia. It's funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada under the Community Dementia Investment Strategy. And the Northwest Dementia Working Group is a key partner on that project.
So I know this kind of work often involves many people, but could you elaborate a bit on your role, maybe your philosophy, but also maybe on some of the other people who have been involved in this, students, partners, etc.?
Yeah, so my philosophy is really that we work together with and we don't work for. And so I work together with people with dementia and their families. It's involved, my work has involved people with dementia as co-researchers. We've published in academic journals and books together. We've co-presented at different forums. And so there's been a number of members of the Northwest Dementia Working Group who I've worked with for a long time. So Bill Heibein, who you'll be hearing from shortly, and Susan Bithry, I've worked with them for probably close to 14 years. We've had other members who have come on board, like David Glover and Bill Mercereau and Bill and Clara, and a host of others who make this work happen. In terms of Lakehead University, your research office has been incredibly supportive, and I wanted to acknowledge particularly Anne Klemenko and Sue Wright, who always answer my very many questions that I have. And then all of my work is run through SARA, the Center for Education and Research on Aging and Health. So there's some staff there, Ruth Wilford, who just recently retired, who was really instrumental at the beginning of my journey at Lakehead to helping to introduce me to community partners and supporting that work. Carlina Marchese, who joined more recently with the Building Capacity Project. Dr. Nisha Sutherland, who's an associate professor in the School of Nursing. We work on virtually everything together, so she's really, really fantastic colleague. And of course, students. So Emily Gaudette, Bailey Van Dorp, and Lindsay Water, more recent students, but I had many, many students along the way. So my research and my ideas, are really inspired by all of these people, but through conversations with the Northwest Dementia Working Group members, through people at Dementia Cafe, which I'll talk about shortly, and the Dementia Sisterhood, which is a group that I facilitate for women living with dementia across Canada.
I know you've mentioned it, but very briefly, who are some of the funders for these projects?
Canadian Institutes of Health Research, Public Health Agency of Canada, over the years, the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and Ontario, Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, the Ministry of Health and Ontario Health, and local organizations as well.
All right, viewers, stay tuned. We'll be back after a very short break to continue our conversations with Dr. Elaine Wiersma. Welcome back, viewers. You are watching Research Matters. We are joined now by Bill Heibein, member of Northwest Dementia Working Group and Living with Dementia. Thank you, Bill, for speaking with us, and to Dr. Elaine Wiersma for speaking to us about dementia and her research. Elaine, tell us about the specific impact of your work in our region, Northwestern Ontario.
Well, I think there are probably two big impacts from my perspective. I think the first is that we've created a really intentional community of people living with dementia and their families and their supporters. And the second is that I think we've had some success and certainly opportunities to challenge the stigma of dementia and what that means. This is not just a result of my work, it's a collective endeavor that we do together. But my work is a bit non-traditional, and so since I have a background of working in practice, I think a lot about the ways that I can contribute back to the community of people with dementia and their families. And so beyond some specific research projects, there are a number of initiatives that have emerged out of this work. I've already mentioned the Northwest Dementia Working Group, which is an amazing outcome of the self-management project that we did. And then in 2018, we started a social program called Dementia Cafe, A Place to Belong. The idea for this emerged throughout our interactions with people with dementia and their families, as well as health and social care providers across Northwestern Ontario. And so from the stories that I was hearing from them, we realized that there was a gap in our community for social programs for people living with dementia and their families. And so the goal of Dementia Cafe is really to provide a social environment that's inclusive and welcoming, and provides opportunities for social connection and interaction for people with dementia, regardless of their age or their stage of dementia, and for their families or their care partners. And so we do have amazing resources in our community, like day programs and support groups, but they're often geared towards people with dementia themselves or towards their family. And so this was a real opportunity for us to provide something that was very non-threatening for both people with dementia and their families. So we have people who come with their spouses or their partners, with their children, with their grandchildren. It's just a great environment. And it's also on the weekends, which most programs are offered during the week, during business hours, and so we offer weekend programming. And so that is, again, I think a very specific impact. The program is a partnership with Urban Abbey and runs on Sunday afternoons from 2 to 4. For the first year, we received a New Horizons for Seniors grant, and then the program is funded ongoing through Ontario Health. So that's a very real example of some of the ways and the impacts of the collective work that we do together with people with dementia and their families. Jane was a founding member of our advisory committee for the Dementia Cafe. This is her and her son Jamie, and a volunteer prior to entering long-term care. And Clara Mercereau is our regular participant at Dementia Cafe and is one of our most enthusiastic promoters here with her daughter. So it's really so important to have something like this because there's no one who understands the experience of dementia like somebody else who's gone through it and who's living that experience. So we're really creating this wonderful community that's growing all the time of people with dementia, of their families and their supporters. And it's just a really beautiful thing to come in on a Sunday afternoon and see people sitting together, talking, laughing, eating, and supporting each other. And so it's really about relationships that form the foundation of the work that I do. The trust that's built, the friendships that are developed are really what contributes to the involvement of the various research projects and to helping create a society that's far more inclusive and supportive of people with dementia.
Excellent. Bill, thank you again for being with us today.
You're welcome.
When did you get involved with these grassroots initiatives and what drew you to these projects?
Well, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2000. And at that time, I tried to connect with the Alzheimer's Society of Thunder Bay, who put me in touch with a support group that was at that time at St. Joseph's Heritage. In 2008, Elaine came to the support group, one of the support group meetings, looking for volunteers for a project she was just getting into called the Photo Voice. And that was my initial contact with Elaine, and it started me into the projects at LU. And then subsequently, in 2011, Elaine invited me to get involved in the international conference in Toronto. So I attended that with Elaine and met Sherry Dupuis down there, who Elaine has referred to earlier. That connected me to the University of Waterloo and has just mushroomed from there.
Excellent. Are there many community and volunteers?
There are quite a few. I think a lot of people are reluctant because they're being told so much about what they are no longer capable of doing. And that goes back to the stigma associated with this diagnosis.
Give me some of your personal experiences on working on some of the different research projects and the community endeavors.
The big thing I thoroughly enjoy is the personal contact that comes out of these various organizations and various projects that we're involved with. Plus the fact that I'm able to pick up and learn what other people are doing and try and use the portions of what they are doing that I think is going to be beneficial to me. So I like the play off back and forth, but the socialization aspect of it is just tops.
And can you tell me a little bit why you think this research and work on dementia is important?
I guess it goes back to the story that is saying nothing about us without us. A lot of what is brought out for people with dementia is all brought out with good intentions by people who think this is what we need. But for us to be able to put into context what we think we need and how we think it should be applied to us, I think that's very, very important.
So we certainly see a lot that is being done, but more for caregivers, academic partners, members of the community, what else do you think can be done?
The big thing that I want to see is people who have the diagnosis, not to sit around, don't take the diagnosis, sit in the living room and look at a wall. Get involved. Basically, I think the more that someone with a diagnosis can be seen out and active in the community, the more it will do and benefit us to try and fight the stigma that goes along with this disease.
Well, as you know, Elaine, our show is called Research Matters. Why does research on dementia matter?
Well, as Bill mentioned, the stigma. So there's an assumption that once people are diagnosed with dementia, they're no longer capable. And given the numbers that are growing of people with dementia, I think that should concern us. There are very few people in our community who haven't been touched by dementia in one way or another. People with dementia are talked about as burdens on our system and our society rather than as contributors. But it's simply not true. We've seen this to be very different in the work that we've done. People with dementia are still themselves, and they can still contribute, and we've got amazing examples of that.
Excellent. So I know we have some videos. Can you quickly tell us about some of the content?
Sure. So the videos were made through the Building Capacity Project. They were created by Westport Productions. And we wanted to showcase people with dementia in a positive way, to show what they're contributing and to challenge the assumption that people with dementia become dependent on others and are not able to be a positive force for change. And so this is featuring a few of our members from the Northwest Dementia Working Group.
Excellent. All right, viewers, we'll be taking a short break after these videos, and we welcome you back then. Welcome back. You're watching Research Matters at Lakehead University, and we're talking to Dr. Elaine Wiersma and Bill about dementia. Bill, what changes have you seen as a result of this research and the community work?
I think the one big change that I've noticed is there's not the reluctance to have those with a diagnosis become directly involved in research or to become directly involved in what we think is important to us.
Elaine, you've talked about your passion for this research and your personal background. Well, why do you continue with this work?
It's so incredibly rewarding. The opportunity to be with people with dementia and their families. I mean, there's a freedom and acceptance in those environments, you know, with the Northwest Dementia Working Group, Dementia Cafe, and the other groups. We've become a community in the strongest sense of the word. People step up for each other. We celebrate babies and grandbabies, and we help each other out when someone is struggling, and we go to funerals and support others through their grief. That's part of what happens as well, but we have a lot of fun together, and so it truly is a community. And it's one that's continuing to grow, which is really exciting. You know, there are people who no longer are involved, but there are new people who continue to get involved all the time. Dementia Cafe really can bring people through those doors because it's a very non-judgmental environment. We don't ask anybody about their diagnosis when they walk through the doors. Sometimes people are really shy and uncomfortable, but they get over that relatively quickly. Sometimes they don't know very much about their diagnosis, but the ways that some of the longtime participants step up and connect with them, share information and support each other is just really inspiring. People might then get involved in the Northwest Dementia Working Group and perhaps decide to get involved in research that we're doing together or participate in education and advocacy and speak publicly about their experiences. And so the research, the education, and the knowledge translation, the community programs, and the relationships that we develop just really all work together. And I guess also for myself, I really feel an urgency for change. There's a lot of gaps in services and supports for people with dementia. That's not just a local problem, that's a problem all across the country and beyond. There's a lot of stigma and misunderstanding around dementia, which can really cause significant harm to people with dementia and their families. And so the journey of dementia isn't an easy one for most people. And so I just really feel that I have the opportunity to give back. I've been given a lot of gifts along the way, support throughout this journey to where I am today. And I just really want to do something to make change and to make that journey a little bit easier for people with dementia in our community. So we've done a lot of work over the last 14, 15 years, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done.
One of the things I know about Sarah and researchers in this area is their involvement of students. Can you tell me, are students excited to be part of these kind of projects, and in any ways you can recruit them, and what do you see for the future of research coming from our students in this area?
Absolutely. I mean, students have the opportunity, not just to get involved in the research aspect of it and learn more about doing research, which is a fantastic opportunity, but they have the opportunity to be involved in seeing the knowledge translation piece of it that happens at SARA, and being engaged and involved with people with dementia and their families. So this community that we talk about, that we've created, it involves supporters, it involves students, as well as people with dementia and their families. So some really amazing opportunities, I think, for those students to be involved in something a little bit different than they might expect traditional research to be, but also to be a part of this amazing community.
Excellent. Well, this program very much is about community-based research, and this is an excellent example of it. I think the Dementia Cafe is a wonderful idea. As you say, we are not a glum lot, and having that experience is absolutely fantastic. Where can people hear more about these projects?
So you can go to the Center for Education and Research on Aging and Health website. It's www.cerah.lakeheadu.ca.
Finally, where can people connect with you, or how can they learn more about the Dementia Cafe? Is registration required, or can one just drop in?
No registration is required. One can just drop in. There's no cost to the program. We run Dementia Cafe 3 Sunday afternoons a month from 2 to 4 p.m. at Urban Abbey on Red River Road. Our next cafes are August 14th and 28th. You can connect with us on Facebook, so you can look for Dementia Cafe on Facebook. And there's always information about the cafes, or you can pop into the Habit at Urban Abbey, the coffee shop there, to pick up one of our flyers that has our dates on them. Or of course, you can always email us at dementia.cafe@lakeheadu.ca, or call me for more information. I'd always love to chat. If you're interested in the Northwest Dementia Working Group, you can also follow us on Facebook, or you can be in touch with me and call me for more information.
I shouldn't do a plug, but certainly some of the best coffee in town as well. at So thank you, Elaine, for this very good and excellent and important work. Dementia is not just about being forgetful, as we've heard today. It is so much more. Learning and raising awareness about caring for people with dementia are to be promoted. There's a need for a deeper understanding. Thank you for providing your insights and sharing your experience as well, Bill. It was really great to meet you. Dear viewers, on that note, I invite you to watch the past editions of Research Matters on LU's YouTube page. We will be happy to hear from you. Please share your research interests, comments, and views. On that optimistic note on how research matters to all of us, my name is Andrew Dean, Lakehead University's Vice President of Research and Innovation, and happy to have you join us today. Thank you.